GM. GM. Today is Wednesday, the 8th of May. Daily levels. Alright, so Bitcoin is showing its first signs of real weakness. I mentioned this yesterday on the stream, if you were there, that this area where people were looking at, basically, price had dropped down to a lower level. That's the first thing, right? So Bitcoin is spending quite a bit of time consolidating up at this area. We then had a false breakout attempt, and then it was consolidating mostly at a lower level. That's one of your early signs of weakness. We also then had this sort of open mouth broadening wedge pattern, and it touched both sides multiple times and then front ran it. So when it front runs that side, that shows the weakness. If you've got a bullish, this also goes for like trend lines, but more so for these type of patterns, because this can be bullish or bearish depending on the context. You can know this is the Livermore, and quite often when these are bullish, what they actually do is they don't come back to the other side, right? It'll actually, because everyone sees it at this point, like, oh, look, it's a rising wedge or a broadening mouth channel or whatever. And then it front runs this, doesn't get to there and breaks out. So we've had that in the opposite direction. Now Bitcoin's quite clearly weak. Now, the difference of this is, I don't think this is still possible here. I don't think this is a quick flush down to hunt longs, because Bitcoin moved up into the highs. And when you look on the daily chart with the bands and the 50, that level was exactly where it needed to retest to become bullish, and it didn't. Alright, pushed above, got above the bands once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, tried 64k. See here? No closes above 64k. One close above this breakdown level, which technically you would call a structure break, but obviously not a very strong one, quite weak. And we're back below the bands now. So to me, it's really simple. 63 to 65 is where it needs to consolidate. And below there, it's bearish. But bearish only as far as 58.2 really. 63 to 65. That's the area it needs to actually consolidate in for me. So below that, we're looking at continuation down. Now, there's a big gap down here, so down in this area, especially if it drops straight down, people probably get them too short and there's a squeeze possibility. Question is, will it squeeze up, make new highs? Is it going to be bullish? Is it just going to reject? Is it going to pop back into range like this path? All remains to be seen. But overall, there isn't much strength in BTC. I talked about this, about how there's not a huge amount. I don't see any spot demand. And I mentioned it with, yes, we had a green day, a big spot inflow or a big net inflow day on Friday, but that came after a massive outflow day on Wednesday. And so when you look at those 2 days, you can see here as well, by the way, the volume profile of all of this from it first came up into this area is sitting at about 63.6, and the value area is 63 up to 64.2. Being below there is just, by no measures is that bullish. It can all change, but it's currently not. And when you see that 500 million day, right? There's a day of 500 million selling, which happens right down here at the lows. You then have a day of 300 million of buying, or of inflows I should say, 570, 560 of outflows, and 370 of inflows. So to me, that's just massive panic selling, and then in the same kind of panic buying. Oh no, it reclaimed, I shouldn't have sold. And you got a bunch of people getting back in. But the inflows were lower than the outflows. So net, there was still outflows there. So there's not strength. Then you had 217 the following day, which would put you back closer to the original 560. And that came on Monday, the 6th here, because obviously those other 2 days were the weekend. That was Saturday, Sunday, no ETFs then. Then we had more inflows on this day with a rejection candle, a bearish candle, and then we're drifting sideways. And yesterday we had outflows again. 0 from BlackRock, 0 from a bunch of them. Very low flows from Fidelity. Back to outflows again for Grayscale after a couple of inflow days, which again confirms my suspicion, at least for now, that Grayscale are not buying, right? People are not buying through GBDC. Somebody or a group of people just sold too much in the panic, and there was more inflows as people wanted to buy back in. That's different to being bullish new flows. So there's no way to slice it. No other way to slice it. This is bearish. It's a bearish chart. It's a bearish setup. It's a bearish market until proven otherwise. Bitcoin has very clear levels to prove otherwise. It has to break that first, which it hasn't done convincingly. Yes, you have a close, but that's not convincing, right? Convincing is what we've seen multiple times at bottoms, where it gets to that breakdown level and clears it. This got to the breakdown level, got above it, and consolidated above it for a week, right? And I mean, you can see this over and over and over and over again. What happens when it convincingly gets above breakdown levels, like this with an impulsive candle, leads to continuation, and so on and so on. So we don't have that yet. Bitcoin is still pretty weak. We are still in the weakest period of the year, May to June, kind of quiet markets, gets a little bit dead as you go towards summer. I'm still not really expecting immediate breakdowns. I don't know. I just think there is a lot of bearish sentiment around as well. Because I think as soon as price does this again, right, people have seen it now. They've seen it over here and ignored it. They've seen it over here and ignored it. They've seen it over here and ignored it or buried their head in the sand. And each time it's down, it's down, it's down. They're like, oh no, this looks like the same thing again, down. First thing, I'm expecting it to just go down, right? Because you don't want to overcomplicate things. Don't try and guess the chart or tell the chart what to do. This is a chart that's going lower. It is losing the support level it had. It is losing the consolidation it had that could have got it bullish. So it is going down right now. But will it go all the way to new lows? Don't know. I would expect probably it drops into here. People get themselves, not even there, could drop into there, squeeze up, could drop into there, squeeze up. And it can even take these highs and still remain bearish and just not break down yet. And even if it is breaking down, it could happen weeks from now. So it doesn't mean everything's just going to immediately nuke. But there are plenty of signs. You know, you had altcoins broadly outperforming Bitcoin there for a few days. Meme coins pumping higher and taking out highs and reversing. So plenty of signs of what I would look at for, you know, a potential top. At least a local top. And then the thing I've been showing, inverse the chart. Is this bearish? This chart, inversed, is not bearish yet. Meaning, the market's not bullish. Right? Because for this chart to be going to new lows, as you would inverse it, you would need Bitcoin to be pushing strongly into this area. Not creating higher highs and higher lows. There's a low and a high. And a higher low fails to go lower, right? A higher high breaks to new lows, or new highs, sorry. A higher low, a higher high, and this is currently a higher low. It does not break below that. Therefore, the direction you're looking at for Bitcoin is absolutely up on that chart, which is down on this chart into the 50s. Again, that's what's going to happen, all else being equal. Now, the market, of course, does not always just play out that simply, but it depends on positioning. How are people positioned? How have the altcoins been doing? Some of the ones that have been moving the most, coins like Render, putting in reversals above after taking out some key levels. Now, with Render specifically, I think the biggest area of resistance is still above this point of control and this daily order block. So I wouldn't be surprised if render has another push to come. It did touch into it. It might consolidate here, sweep again before going down. It could just go straight down. It has taken that liquidity, dropped off. It's not a bullish chart yet. It's also a bit of a news failure. Render started tweeting about how they're, how Apple are using Render's Octane X, whatever it is, program on their ad for the iPad or something, or for, I don't know. Anyway, which would be considered or should be seen to be bullish news, and price has not gone higher. In fact, it topped out and went lower. That's because insiders always front run, and so a lot of the move up would have been front running of that. And it's not a surprise that Render and Apple have some kind of connection. They don't have an official partnership yet, but some kind of connection, because we've known this since Apple launched the Vision Pro. When Apple launched the Vision Pro, Render were tweeting about it and saying how Render integrates with it, blah blah blah. So, for VR, other leaders, Pepe has been leading recently, and here's Pepe. Right, so Pepe has come up, taken a key liquidity level up here. I think if I'm right in saying on Perps it has. Let me just double check. I'm pretty sure on Perps it took those stops. Maybe not quite. High 9186, 9233. Okay, double top then. So it hasn't touched those ones off, but it has moved up into this area and is currently rejecting of it. Yesterday's candle is a pretty strong break in the opposite direction. Now, it's not panic stations, fucking we're going to zero. This can very easily just consolidate, hold here, push higher, and I wouldn't be surprised for a third push, 1, 2, 3, on any of these charts. Sol got right up into resistance again, rejecting off it. So these are just charts that are doing what you'd expect bearish charts to do, which is they have a resistance very clearly, they have a support very clearly, it's in a downtrend, right, as you can see, and so if it's forming a consolidation in a downtrend and it finds resistance at resistance, it's probably going to go to support, and then when one or the other side breaks, that's when you know the direction. So right now Sol is saying uncertain. Ethereum, just zero strength, not a huge amount of weakness either. There's a pretty solid support below, but there's no impulse, there's no strength above. And then I'll lead this over into the stock market, because my opinion is the stock market has not finished its decline yet. And you can see this from the S&P pushing up into these highs. There's a volume point of control up there. Now where you can see I have all these alerts. The bearish continuation below daily market structure break and the red line. So the daily market structure level for the S&P was over here. This was the last swing low before the highs, and that broke on the 12th of April and broke again on the 15th, or confirmed on the 15th, and now we're retesting it. So above there, the S&P is fine. It's fine above there, and it can go higher. But if it drops back below that daily structure level and is unable to reclaim, that's when you're looking at clean new lows coming pretty easily. And it's not really looking like an overly bullish chart right now. To me, it's quite clear. There's a big amount of resistance here in this block, and we're pushing right into it. And you can see this in previous examples. When it pushes up into that resistance, it has to clear it. If it doesn't clear it, it's going to go lower, right? You have these big resistance blocks, pushes up into them, is unable to clear it, versus something like this, which is what people would like to see. There was a big resistance on S&P, right? There was a big resistance at that level. It pushed up, initially rejected. It got back above it, clearly cleared that level, cleared that block of supply, cleared the highs, and then continued. So there's work to do on the S&P. And beyond that, I don't think there's any real strong opinion to have, except for downside continuation most likely, because that's the way the chart is currently moving. back towards the pivot of 58.3, unless Bitcoin can invalidate that by pumping back up here, holding, and eventually flipping that level. So work to do. I lean bearish because the chart's bearish. It's just drifting though. You go to the lower time frame, right? It's just kind of drifting around here, and the data itself is sort of, it's not really even overly bearish. There's no demand, right? There's obviously no strength here. Funding has been pushing consistently positive, but not, it's below neutral, it's below 0.01, so it's not like funding is high by any means. Spot premium still there. The spot premium is really disappearing as people tried to long it. Now we're starting to see it pick back up again. CVDs, spot has led the selling most of the way down from here, as you can see. If I go from the top, spot was leading the selling in these key areas here and here and here, but spot's the green one, by the way. Spot and futures there are basically the same. Nothing to really read into that. So I think just it's the sideways market. Sideways market, after we've had a big run up, would be, for me, a place to just wait and see what happens. Bitcoin is sitting exactly like it would before a big break, right? That the way it's just falling down, breaking below, retesting, turning support, which was support all the way through, right? It was support all the way through Monday and Tuesday, and it broke that, retested it this morning, below it, at the lows. If it's not able to break this, this is the setup for a proper break, and at that point, you're waiting to see, does it trap and reclaim, or go lower? Now, alternatively, it can reclaim this, and if it does, and it reclaims and holds in there, then you're looking at potential for it to climb back up towards the mid-range and towards the range high and consolidate more, and then it could break out. There are potential bullish paths for BTC, but it's just not bullish right now. So I would take it easy. I would lean bearish, but always with one eye on the fact that if it doesn't move quickly, shorts will get too aggressive and they'll get squeezed. So that's it. Expecting it to go down because we are going down, but ready for it to not go down. GM.